Does this do the thing that so many hope a reformed tax code would do? Does it make the tax code more simple? Many are saying, not really. And one of those is Dan Mitchell. He's joining us now to discuss this. He wrote about it recently. His column appeared in townhall.com. He's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute, and he's a Forbes contributor. Dan, thanks for being with us.
Oh, glad to be on the program.
It looks like your reaction to Congressman Camp's tax reform proposal is kind of underwhelmed you are. Tell us about it.
I'm lukewarm. You've probably heard the old joke that what's good news and bad news when your mother-in-law drives off a cliff in your brand new car? Well, you look at the Camp tax reform plan. He does slightly lower tax rates. That's a good thing. He does clean up about 1/4 of the tax code, including, very admirably, getting rid of the state and local tax deduction that subsidizes irresponsible politicians in states like New York and California. But, and here's the bad news, here's why I'm not thrilled about it, he increases double taxation on saving and investing. And since every economic theory, even socialism, even Marxism, they all agree you have to set aside some of today's income to finance tomorrow's growth, the idea that we're going to increase double taxation, make it more expensive for businesses to do new investment, those are things I don't like. So on net, is it probably a move in the right direction? Yes, but boy, he went through all this trouble. He really did put in a lot of hard work. He set up these working groups at the committee. But then at the end of the day, this is what we get? No, I'm underwhelmed.
I want to take this to my friends at the table. Before I do, you wrote in your column, you've been following the tax reform proposals since the early 1990s, and you developed for yourself a sort of report card that you can grade various proposals on. I'm going to put it up now for our viewers to see, because I think what's interesting is the categories that you use to grade various proposals. You talk about whether or not rates are reduced, simplicity, savings and investments, social engineering. Are politicians using the tax code to accomplish political goals? Is it fair? Is it easy to evade, and on and on? I think you have some good categories here. It seems to me, though, when we ask ourselves, is Congressman Camp's proposal good enough? Many of us quickly go, no, I want a flat tax. I want pure simplicity. I want pure growth. And we have to balance that against realism. What can actually get passed? Did Camp maybe hit a ground here where no one is overwhelmed, no one can cheer, but maybe it actually has a prospect of passing?
I don't think anything will pass with Harry Reid in the Senate and Obama in the White House. But here's what I would say about Camp's plan. If this was the final result of a long legislative process, compromises between the House and Senate, compromises with the president, then you could maybe say, okay, it's not perfect, but he started way up here and he had to compromise down to here. What I'm concerned about is he started with the compromise. And so if we actually had a chance of anything moving forward, by the time it went through the legislative meat grinder, we'd probably wind up where we are right now. And if you start with something that's a compromise, how are you going to get the American people excited? That there's nothing in this plan that promises to fundamentally restrict the overbearing power and unfairness of the IRS. If you did real tax reform, you could actually achieve some of those things.
Well, you know, one of the things that I believe, I mean, I don't think anybody realistically expects anything to happen with the upcoming midterm elections. What do you guys think will actually be realistic as far as, like, even if the Republicans take the Senate, let's say, or take, you know, and we know they're going to take the House. I think people just believe that. But what realistically can happen?
This is like that scene in The Godfather where he says, "My offer is this, nothing." Nothing's going to happen. They don't want to change the tax code. Will's point, I think, is absolutely correct in that we should probably look at this as trying to take a step in the right direction. You don't want to be purists when you have a 70,000-page tax code. It's one page or nothing. You're probably not going to get there. You need to have more of a groundswell of understanding. But for the progressive left, for President Obama and those like him, it's not about actually even really the revenue. They like that. They need to spend a lot. But it really is, I think, first and foremost from the question of the social engineering the tax code allows. It's the effect on your daily life. It's the effect on policy without having to pass legislation. Essentially being able to tell people what to do. It's the tyranny of the tax code is what they like. The money is the second best part of it.
And that's why they chose the IRS as the enforcement mechanism for Obamacare. A perfect example right now of what's going on. But I look at this and I you know, I can throw this back to Dan. I have a question about why, I mean, if we're going to have anything that's substantive, why do you think that they would, in Camp's proposal, not do something more for small businesses? That was one of the things that, the way the tax code is set up for small businesses and individuals is grossly unfair, and they didn't even touch that in this. So how do you expect to have some real tax reform that could, help small business owners and the like and help create jobs when even Camp, as a Republican, didn't address that?
That's a great point. Very few people understand that the vast majority of businesses, especially the small businesses in the country, they file using the individual income tax, something called the Schedule C form. Well, that means they have these 39.6 or in Camp 35% tax rates. Well, if you have a 35% tax rate for small businesses, but then corporations get a 25% tax rate, that's going to strike some people as unfair. Now, it's true, of course, corporations have double tax on dividends, so maybe this was Camp's way of balancing it all out. But that brings me back to my fundamental point. If we had done some additional things, like, say, dealing with the health care exclusion, which is such a big problem where the tax code causes bad health care policy, we would have had more money to lower rates more significantly. So yes, I applaud Camp for taking a step, but I wish he had taken a big leap instead.
Yeah, and you know what? I agree with Dan Mitchell's point in that when you're going into a negotiation, often the party that gets more is the party that goes in high, that says, this is what we want. And they know they can't get that.
Camp is on his way
but
out
they know
as
that they are
Ways and Means
going to...
chairman anyway. So it's like,
so
he could
why
have
did
gone
he
for
do
the
that?
gusto.
Right.
He's on his way out as chairman anyway, so why not go for it?
So I tend to think that, yes, this could have been a lot more courageous in its prescriptions. But one of the best things about this, and we can't wait till 2017 to bring down the corporate tax rate. It's one of the highest in the world, 35%, down to 25%, which this wants to do.
Which
because,
I think is
that is going to, and I hope so.
Sarah's question, I think that's something, if we get a
And
Republican
that will help,
Congress, that's
our
something
economy
we
to
get.
grow like even 2 to 3% more each year. That the Wall Street Journal predicted that it would help our economy grow. And we need that growth.
And
we need Americans, companies bringing jobs back to the United States.
That
Absolutely.
is where the politics overtakes the revenue side of this, because companies won't bring their money back here, but President Obama and those like him want to look tough on corporations and want to keep the rate high because it makes them feel like they're being more fair. It's a social justice issue. Everyone knows there's going to be a lot of revenue taken in by the IRS. It's just a question of who we take it from, and that's where they have their fun.
But Tara brought up a really great point with small businesses. I mean, you can drop the tax rate on the corporate, but America is about small businesses too, and this is about the American people and the middle class. And you really need to take that into consideration. You can't just ignore it and slap them with a high tax rate, and then what we'll see is, a problem with job growth in this country and people closing their businesses.
I hate to be the curmudgeon at the table, but last night we had a conversation about entitlement reform. And what I said in the end is you can't just indict politicians, you have to indict the American people, because they are the ones ultimately that stand in the way of Social Security or Medicare reform by not asking it strenuously enough, in fact, opposing it with their politicians. Tax code's the same way. The social engineering aspect of the tax code, people like their deductions.
Their
They
mortgage
like
deduction,
their
the charitable
exactly
deduction,
right.
And the first
other
politician
loopholes.
that comes in and says, hey, I'm going to simplify it, that sounds good.
By
And then he
minimizing
explains
deductions,
how.
yeah.
That doesn't sound so good. And by the way, that counts for companies as well, for corporations as well, because those companies and those corporations, they benefit from all those loopholes and those deductions.
But if they do it in a way where they show a compare and contrast, then, where it shows, okay, look, this is how much money your family would save currently, but you go through X, Y, and Z. However, if we simplified it, your family would save X, Y,
It's
A,
gonna
B,
take
and
some
C.
selling, for
You
sure,
have
yeah.
to sell it. Yeah, I mean, nobody knows what the hell the tax code says. That's the only thing that we actually pay someone to have to go through and do our taxes, because we as an average person have no idea.
It's designed that way.
That's
This is like in ancient
It's
Rome.
a
They would write
Byzantine
laws at the top of the column and nobody would
Yes.
see it. But they say
Already
the laws are there. Dan, real quick, this is not going anywhere, or is this actually useful for any purposes? We got a break in a minute, but we want to get your take.
It's useful, as John Boehner said, to get the conversation started, and God knows I like that because I've been working on this issue for 20 years, and I'll probably die with the paper on tax reform in front of me. But one thing I forget, I don't know who said it, but a very important point, we're never going to fix the tax code unless we also get control of government spending. If we don't reform the entitlements, then the only tax reform we're going to get out of Washington is ladling a value-added tax on top of a terrible income tax.
Like
that would
Europe.
be a bad deal.
That's what they
Very
do in
bad
Europe.
deal. Yeah. Dan, we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.